What if the voice in your head isn't you, but a habit you learn too well? Welcome to Momentum Mind. This story will show you how your thoughts shape your reality, and how to stop letting fear make your decisions. No motivation. No cliches. Just a powerful shift that changes how you move through life. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Valley Where Thoughts Took Shape. The valley appeared long before anyone knew its name. It stretched between soft hills that breathed mist every morning and exhaled warmth by evening. The air there carried a strange weight, as if thoughts themselves drifted slowly enough to be seen. People who lived in the valley learned early that their inner voices did not stay hidden. Feelings leaked into the soil. Beliefs colored the sky. Hope could lift roofs, and despair could crack stone. At the edge of the valley stood a small town built from quiet habits. Doors opened at the same hours. Faces carried the same expressions, not out of boredom, but out of expectation. People here had learned how things usually went, and they trusted that pattern more than possibility. In a narrow house near the river lived a man named Elias. He was not remarkable in appearance. He moved carefully, as if the world might bruise him if he stepped too hard. His eyes often drifted downward, not in shame, but in anticipation of something falling. When something went wrong, even something small, he felt it echo far beyond the moment, like a bell rung inside his chest that never stopped vibrating. On a morning thick with gray light, Elias stood by his window and watched the river drag leaves past his door. One leaf snagged on a stone and spun helplessly. He felt the familiar tightening in his chest. "This is how it always goes," he whispered, though no one was there to hear. That thought slid into place as easily as a key in a lock. He dressed slowly, hands heavy, as if gravity pressed harder on him than on others. Outside, the town stirred. A woman across the path dropped a basket of apples. One rolled toward him, stopped at his feet, and split open on a rock. She sighed. "Of course." Elias nodded in sympathy. He did not help her gather the rest. He already knew how the moment would end. Bruised fruit. A sour mood. A story she would tell herself later about how clumsy she always was, how the world never quite lined up for her. The valley encouraged such stories. It listened to them. It remembered. Far above the town, beyond the mist, stood the watchtower. No one knew who built it. Some said it had grown from the mountain itself. Others believed it appeared only when someone was ready to see it. From its highest window, the whole valley could be observed, not as it was, but as people believed it to be. Inside the tower lived a quiet figure known only as the listener. The listener did not judge. He did not correct. He watched the way thoughts wrapped themselves around events, shaping them into meaning. When someone stumbled, he watched whether they saw a stone, a curse, or a lesson. When joy arrived, he watched whether it was welcomed or feared. On that gray morning, the listener leaned forward. He had been waiting for Elias. Elias worked in the archive hall, a vast building where stories were stored. Not written stories, but remembered ones. Every sigh, every assumption, every whispered belief found its way there, stacking invisibly atop one another until the air hummed with them. Elias's task was simple: sort the echoes of thought into quiet order. He did this without complaint, though each echo tugged at him like a familiar sadness. That day, as he reached for a shelf, his foot slipped. The ladder shook. His breath caught. For a moment, time stretched thin. He did not fall. But the fear rushed through him anyway, hot and absolute. "There it is again," he muttered. "Proof." Proof of what, he could not say. Only that something was wrong with him. That mistakes followed him like shadows. That safety was an illusion granted briefly before being taken away. He finished his work in silence, shoulders tight, mind loud. When he stepped outside, the sky had shifted. The clouds were moving faster now, restless. A wind curled around his ankles, tugging him toward the road that led up the hill. He did not remember deciding to walk that way. The path grew steeper as the town fell away behind him. With each step, the air grew thinner, clearer. His thoughts, usually tangled, began to separate like threads pulled apart by careful fingers. He felt exposed. Seen. The watchtower rose ahead, carved from pale stone that glowed softly even without sun. Its door stood open. Elias stopped. No one went there. Everyone knew that. The tower was not forbidden, but avoided, like a mirror that showed too much. A voice drifted out, not loud, not commanding, but patient. "You've been telling the same story for a long time." Elias swallowed. "I didn't know I was speaking out loud." "You always are," the voice replied. "You just learned to ignore it." He stepped inside. The interior was vast and simple. No furniture. No torches. Light seemed to come from the air itself. At the center stood the listener, neither young nor old, with eyes that reflected not faces, but patterns. "Why am I here?" Elias asked. The listener tilted his head. "Because your thoughts have grown heavy enough to bend your path." Elias felt a flicker of irritation. "That's just how things are. Some people are lucky. Some aren't." The listener smiled, not unkindly. "That is one way to tell the story." "What do you mean?" The listener gestured, and the air shimmered. Scenes formed like reflections on water. Elias saw himself as a child, dropping a cup, being scolded. Then a youth, failing at a task and deciding he would always fail. Then a man, avoiding chances before they could reject him. Each moment glowed briefly, then darkened as a single thread wrapped around it, tightening. "That thread," the listener said, "is your explanation." Elias felt a chill. "I don't understand." "You believe events reveal who you are. You believe their meaning is permanent. You believe their reach is endless." Elias frowned. "Isn't that how it works?" The listener's eyes softened. "It is one way. Not the only one." The air shifted again. A new image appeared. Another person, another life. Someone who stumbled and laughed. Someone who failed and tried again. Someone who treated pain as weather instead of prophecy. "This one tells a different story," the listener said. "The same events. Different meaning." Elias felt something twist inside him. Not hope. Not yet. Something quieter. Curiosity. "You mean I could tell it differently?" The listener nodded. "Not by lying. By looking again." The tower hummed. Outside, the wind changed direction. Elias felt a strange resistance rise within him. A fear sharper than sadness. If his story could change, then everything he believed about himself might be wrong. And if that were true, what else had he been wrong about? The listener seemed to sense this. "Change does not erase your past," he said gently. "It only loosens its grip." The floor beneath Elias warmed, as if the tower itself approved. Below them, in the valley, clouds shifted. Light touched places long kept dim. Elias took a slow breath. "What happens now?" he asked. The listener smiled, and for the first time, his eyes held a glint of something like anticipation. "No," he said. "You begin to notice the voice that speaks before the feeling arrives." The tower door creaked open behind Elias, though no one had touched it. Outside, the path had changed. It no longer led straight back to the town. It curved. And somewhere beyond the bend, something waited that had been listening to Elias his entire life, patient, quiet, and ready to be answered. Chapter 2: The Voice Beneath the Voice. The path beyond the tower did not feel like a path at all. It was softer than stone, yet firmer than soil, as though it had been shaped by intention rather than tools. Elias stepped onto it with care, half expecting it to vanish beneath him. It did not. Instead, it responded, warming slightly with each step, as if acknowledging his weight, his doubt, his presence. Behind him, the watchtower remained still. It did not call out. It did not follow. It simply watched. Ahead, the land unfolded into a wide plain where the air shimmered faintly, like heat rising from unseen ground. Shapes moved there, but not bodies. They were impressions, like emotions given form and then half forgotten. Elias felt uneasy. This place did not feel dangerous, yet it felt intimate in a way that made him want to turn back. Here, there was no crowd to blend into, no noise to hide behind. Every thought seemed louder. A whisper brushed his ear. Not a voice. A pattern. "You will fail." He stopped walking. The words had not come from outside. They had risen from somewhere deep and familiar, sliding into place as naturally as breath. He had heard them all his life. He waited for the usual tightening in his chest, the sinking feeling that followed such thoughts like a shadow. It came, but faintly, as if distracted. "You hear it, don't you?" Elias turned. A woman stood a few steps behind him. She wore no particular clothing, only shifting colors that changed with her movement. Her face was calm, alert, almost amused. "I hear something," he said carefully. She nodded. "That's the voice beneath the moment. Not the one that reacts, but the one that explains." She gestured, and the air before them rippled. A memory surfaced. Elias saw himself standing before a closed door. He remembered this. A chance he had not taken. A request he had never made. The voice rose again. "Of course it didn't work. You never get what you want." The woman tilted her head. "That voice tells stories very quickly. It doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't ask questions. It sounds like me." Elias said. She smiled. It learned your language. That doesn't make it you. The image shifted. The same moment replayed, but this time the voice spoke differently. That door was closed today. That's all. The difference was small, almost invisible. Yet Elias felt the space it created, like a window cracked open in a sealed room. Why does the first voice feel stronger? He asked. Because it has been fed longer, she replied. And because it promises certainty. They began walking together. The ground beneath them changed with their steps, sometimes soft, sometimes firm, always responsive. Certainty feels safe, she continued, even when it hurts. They passed figures standing still along the path. Each was caught in a loop, replaying moments of disappointment, loss, or shame. Above each head hovered faint symbols, like weather signs only the mind could read. Elias felt a pull toward them. He recognized their stillness. It mirrored his own. What happens if they stop believing those stories? He asked. The woman stopped walking. Then the ground shifts. She knelt and placed her palm on the earth. It rippled outward, and one of the frozen figures stirred. The loop faltered. The image blurred. The figure blinked, confused, then took a single step forward. Elias felt a strange pressure in his chest, halfway between fear and wonder. Is it really that simple? He asked. She laughed softly. Simple does not mean easy. They continued until the air thickened again. Ahead stood a wide mirror, taller than any door, its surface dark and fluid. Elias slowed. I don't like mirrors, he admitted. Most don't, she replied. They tend to show what we've been rehearsing. He approached despite himself. The reflection that emerged was not of his body, but of moments stitched together. Failures stood closer, larger. Successes were distant, hazy, almost out of reach. This is what I see, he whispered. Yes, she said. Because this is what you've practiced seeing. He frowned. Practiced? The mirror shifted. Another version of the reflection appeared, faint but present. In it, the same moments existed, but their weight was different. Failures were smaller, contained. Successes stood nearer, clearer. That version feels unreal, Elias said. Because you haven't lived in it yet. He turned to her. So I just choose the better one? She shook her head. Not choose. Train. She stepped closer, and her voice lowered. Your mind is not a judge. It is a storyteller. And it has learned to tell one kind of story very well. The mirror pulsed. Stories can be rewritten, she continued. But the old ones don't vanish quietly. They argue. They demand proof. They get louder before they fade. Elias felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What if I try and fail again? The woman's eyes softened. Then your old voice will say, see? And your new one will say, so what? He stared at his reflection as it shifted between versions of himself, like overlapping dreams. I don't know how to listen to the new voice, he admitted. That's why you're here, she said gently. To learn the difference between a thought and a truth. The ground trembled slightly, not violently, but enough to make the air hum. From somewhere deep beneath the plane came a low sound, like a door unlocking. The mirror began to crack, not breaking, but opening. Beyond it, Elias glimpsed movement. Paths branching. Moments not yet lived. Choices waiting to be interpreted. The woman stepped back. You can't stay here long, she said. The mind resists change when it senses it coming. Elias felt the pull again, stronger now. A sense of being watched, not by the listener this time, but by something closer. Something inside. What happens next? He asked. She smiled, and for the first time there was something like caution in her eyes. Next, she said, you meet the part of you that protects its pain. The mirror widened, and a cold wind rushed through. Elias stepped forward. And the ground beneath him gave way. Chapter 3: The Keeper of the Locked Room. Elias did not fall. He drifted. The sensation was neither weightless nor heavy, but suspended, like being held between breaths. Darkness surrounded him, yet it was not empty. It pulsed with a low awareness, as though the space itself was listening. When his feet touched ground again, it was not earth beneath him, but something smooth and cool, like polished stone warmed by memory. The air smelled faintly of dust and rain. He opened his eyes. He stood in a corridor so long its end disappeared into shadow. Doors lined both sides, each one different. Some were carved with delicate patterns. Others were plain and scarred. A few seemed to tremble, as if something inside pressed against them. At the far end, A single torch burned with a steady flame, and beside it stood a figure. This one felt different from the others Elias had met. He did not shimmer or shift. He was solid, grounded, almost heavy. His posture was rigid, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His eyes were sharp, not unkind, but wary. "You took your time," the figure said. "I didn't know where I was going," Elias replied. "That's usually how people arrive here." The figure stepped aside, gesturing to the doors. "Welcome to the holding place." "What is this?" Elias asked. The figure hesitated. "This is where you keep what hurts too much to touch." A faint vibration passed through the corridor, like a distant heartbeat. Elias took a step forward. The air thickened with each movement, as if resisting him. "You're the one who stops me," Elias said slowly. The figure's jaw tightened. "I protect you." "From what?" "From feeling everything at once." Silence settled between them, heavy and intimate. The figure finally sighed. "You can call me the keeper." Elias looked at the nearest door. "What's behind them?" The keeper followed his gaze. "Moments. Conclusions. Stories you told yourself when you didn't know what else to do." Elias reached for a handle. The keeper's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Not hard, but firm. "Careful," he warned. "Some of those stories were built to keep you standing. If you pull them apart too fast, you might fall." Elias met his eyes. "Or I might finally move." The keeper studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he released his grip. "Choose wisely," he said. Elias opened the door. Inside was a small room, dimly lit. In the center sat a younger version of himself, curled on the floor. The air was thick with unspoken words. A memory rose. A voice raised in disappointment. A promise broken. A moment when hope had reached out and been pulled back too quickly. The younger Elias looked up, eyes wide. "I knew it," he whispered. "I shouldn't have tried." The words struck like a bell. Elias felt his chest tighten. The old urge surged forward, familiar and fierce, the urge to agree, to confirm, to seal the story in place. The keeper watched silently from the doorway. Elias knelt in front of the younger version of himself. His voice trembled. "What happened here?" The boy shrugged. "I failed. So I stopped trying. It was safer." Elias felt the truth of that settle deep within him. It had been safer. It had also been smaller. "What if it wasn't a verdict?" Elias asked quietly. "What if it was just a moment?" The boy blinked. "What if failing didn't mean you were broken?" Elias continued. "What if it only meant you were learning where the edges were?" The room shifted. The air lightened, just a little. The keeper leaned forward, tense. The boy's expression wavered. "But it hurt." "I know," Elias said. "And it still does. But pain doesn't have to be a prison." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the boy stood. The room exhaled. The walls softened, their sharpness easing. The memory did not vanish, but it changed shape. It became something that could be held without bleeding. Elias felt a warmth spread through his chest, unfamiliar and fragile. Behind him, the keeper spoke, voice low. "You're rewriting the lock." Elias turned. "You didn't stop me." The keeper's gaze drifted to the floor. "Because you didn't deny the pain. You listened to it without letting it decide everything." He straightened. "That's dangerous." Elias smiled faintly. "So is staying the same." A deep tremor ran through the corridor. Several doors rattled. Some creaked open a fraction, releasing whispers. The keeper's expression tightened. "If you keep doing this, they'll all want your attention." "Good," Elias said. "I'm tired of pretending they're not there." The keeper studied him, something like pride flickering beneath his caution. "Then you should know," he said. "The next door won't open so gently." Elias nodded. "I didn't expect it to." They walked deeper into the corridor. The air grew heavier with each step, charged with emotion left too long unspoken. They stopped before a door unlike the others. It was dark, unmarked, and cold to the touch. No handle. No seam. Elias felt his breath catch. "What's behind this one?" he asked. The keeper did not answer right away. "This," he said finally, "is where you learn to expect pain before it arrives." The air hummed. The door seemed to pulse, as if something inside was aware of being seen. Elias felt fear rise, sharp and immediate. Not the quiet fear of memory, but something alive and alert. His old instinct surged forward, urging him to step back, to close himself off, to leave this door untouched. The keeper watched him closely. "This is where many turn away," he said. "If you open it, you won't just remember. You'll feel." Elias swallowed. His heart pounded, but beneath it was something else, curiosity, steady and bright. "What happens if I don't?" he asked. The keeper's voice softened. "Then this door keeps shaping your path from the shadows." Elias placed his hand on the cold surface. It throbbed faintly, like a heartbeat waiting to be answered. The corridor seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, deliberately, Elias pressed forward. The door began to open. And from the darkness beyond, something old and powerful stirred, ready to speak the story it had been waiting to tell. Chapter 4: The Shape of the Storm. The door did not swing open. It breathed open. A slow exhale rolled from the darkness beyond, carrying a scent Elias could not place, something like rain on scorched ground, mixed with the faint sharpness of fear long held. The air pressed against his skin, heavy with memory. Inside, there was no room. There was a sky. A vast, churning sky stretched in every direction, filled with clouds that folded and collapsed into one another like living things. Lightning flashed without sound. Wind howled without direction. Beneath it all, an endless sea shifted and surged, dark and restless. Elias stood on nothing and yet did not fall. The keeper remained at the threshold, his outline already blurring. "This is not a place," the keeper said. "It's a pattern." The wind rose as if responding to the words. "What am I looking at?" Elias asked, raising his voice. "The moment you learn to expect the worst," the keeper replied. "Not because it happened once, but because it kept happening just enough to teach you a rule." A wave surged upward, forming a shape before crashing back into the void. Within it, Elias glimpsed flashes of memory, disappointment stacked upon disappointment, each reinforcing the last. A promise broken. A hope delayed. A hand withdrawn. The storm pulsed with each recollection, growing stronger, more confident. "This is where vigilance was born," the keeper said. "Where you learn that hoping too much invites pain." Elias felt the truth of it settle into his bones. He had learned to brace himself long before he learned to dream. A sudden gust pushed against him, hard enough to make him stagger. Instinctively, he braced himself, leaning into the force. The storm responded immediately, roaring louder. The keeper called out, his voice strained. "Do you feel that?" "Yes," Elias shouted. "It's fighting me." The keeper shook his head. "No. It's following you." Elias froze. The wind shifted, matching his stance. When he tensed, it surged. When he leaned back, it swelled again. "It's not attacking," the keeper continued. "It's reflecting." Elias slowly straightened. His muscles loosened, just a fraction. The wind eased. His breath caught. "This storm was built to protect you," the keeper said. "It learned your shape and learned how to move with you." Elias felt a strange grief rise in his chest. "So all this time, I've been fighting myself." The storm quieted, just a little, as if listening. A memory surfaced unbidden. A younger Elias, standing on a threshold, heart racing with excitement. A voice had whispered then too, warning him not to hope too much. He had obeyed. The disappointment that followed had hurt less, but only because he had already numbed himself. "I thought I was being realistic," he murmured. The keeper stepped closer. "You were being careful." The clouds shifted, revealing a faint glow at their center. "But careful became constant," the keeper continued. "And constant became identity." A low rumble echoed, not from the storm, but from Elias himself. "What happens if I stop bracing?" he asked. The keeper hesitated. "Then the storm will change. Not vanish. Change." Elias closed his eyes. He inhaled slowly, deeply, in a way he had not allowed himself to do in years. The air filled his chest, warm and heavy. He let it sit there, uncomfortable, alive. Then he exhaled. The storm shuddered. Not violently. Uncertainly. Elias took another breath. This time, he did not brace. He did not prepare for impact. He simply allowed the sensation to pass through him. The clouds parted slightly. Light filtered down, pale but real. The wind softened, losing its edge. The storm was still there, but it no longer roared. It murmured. Elias felt tears on his face and did not wipe them away. "I thought if I expected the worst, I'd be safe," he whispered. The keeper's voice was gentle now. "Safety isn't the absence of pain," It's the belief that you can survive it. The words settled deep. A low rumble echoed again, but this time it came from below. The storm began to sink, folding inward like a great creature curling to rest. As it receded, something emerged from beneath it, a wide path of solid ground, stretching forward into a mist-lit horizon. Elias exhaled shakily. What happens to the storm? It doesn't disappear, the keeper said. It learns when to rest. The sky above softened, clouds thinning into slow-moving shapes. The air felt lighter, easier to breathe. Elias turned to the keeper. Is this what change feels like? The keeper nodded. At first, yes. Unstable. Quiet in a way that feels wrong. Elias looked ahead. The path glowed faintly, inviting but uncertain. What's next? He asked. The keeper's expression grew solemn. Next, you meet the voice that doubts this will last. As if summoned, a chill crept through the air. The light dimmed. The horizon flickered. From somewhere far ahead came a sound, not a roar, not a whisper, but a slow, deliberate laugh. Low. Knowing. The storm behind Elias stirred once more, not in anger, but in warning. The path ahead narrowed. And from the shadows ahead, something began to walk toward him. Chapter 5. The Doubter Who Knows Your Name. The sound of footsteps carried across the path long before the figure appeared. They were unhurried. Certain. Each step landed with quiet confidence, as though the ground itself expected the weight. Elias felt his pulse quicken, not from fear alone, but recognition. Something in the rhythm felt familiar, uncomfortably so. The mist thickened ahead, and from it emerged a silhouette. It looked like him. Not exactly, but close enough that his breath caught. The same posture. The same way the shoulders sloped forward slightly, as if bracing against unseen weather. Even the eyes, when they came into view, carried that same careful sharpness. Except these eyes held no confusion. Only certainty. Well, the figure said, voice smooth and calm. You've been busy. Elias swallowed. Who are you? The figure smiled faintly. You know who I am. The keeper stood far behind now, distant as a memory. He did not intervene. I'm the one who asks the necessary questions. The figure continued. The one who keeps you realistic. Elias felt a tightening in his chest. You're the doubt. The figure tilted his head. I prefer the realist. Doubt implies weakness. I'm strength. I stop you from embarrassing yourself. From hoping for things you can't have. He gestured toward the softened sky, the quiet path. All of this, he said. It's very pretty. But you don't really believe it lasts, do you? Elias hesitated. The doubter smiled. There it is. The ground beneath them shifted subtly, narrowing the path. You've felt this before. The doubter continued. Every time things start to feel light. Every time hope shows up uninvited. You tighten. You prepare. That's protection, Elias said, though the words felt less solid now. Exactly, the doubter said warmly. And I am very good at it. He stepped closer. The air grew cooler. Remember when you trusted someone and they walked away? He asked softly. Remember when you tried and failed, and everyone saw? Images flickered at the edges of Elias's vision. Not sharp enough to fully form, but sharp enough to sting. You survived because of me, the doubter said. Because I taught you not to reach too far. Elias clenched his fists. You also taught me not to move. The doubter chuckled. Movement is overrated. Stability keeps you intact. The path beneath them trembled. Elias glanced back. The softened storm stirred again, uneasy. You're afraid, the doubter said gently. Not of failing. Of hoping and being wrong. Elias felt the truth of it echo through him. Yes, he admitted. The doubter nodded approvingly. Good. That means you're thinking. The world dimmed slightly, as if responding to the weight of the words. But thinking isn't living, Elias said, surprising himself. The doubter paused. That's a dangerous belief, he said slowly. Living leads to loss. Not living leads to nothing, Elias replied. The doubter's expression tightened. You're forgetting something, he said. Hope hurts more than despair. Despair is predictable. Elias took a step forward, heart pounding. It also doesn't change. The wind picked up. The ground shuddered. The doubter's voice sharpened. You think you're strong now? You think a few insights make you immune? No, Elias said. I think they make me aware. The doubter's smile faltered. You will fail again, he said. I know. You will feel foolish. I already do. You will want to retreat. Elias met his gaze. Probably. Silence fell between them, heavy and electric. And yet, the doubter said slowly, you still think you can walk forward? Elias took a breath. He felt fear rise, real, sharp, undeniable. But beneath it, something steadier remained. Yes. The word echoed. The doubter's face tightened, not with anger, but with something like grief. I was made to protect you, he said quietly. If you stop listening to me, I disappear. Elias shook his head. You don't disappear. You change. The doubter stared at him. You don't need to scream anymore. Elias continued. I hear you. I just won't let you decide for me. The ground trembled violently now. The air pulsed. The doubter staggered back a step, his shape flickering. This isn't over, he said. No, Elias agreed. But it's different. The path beneath Elias widened, steadying. Light gathered around his feet. The doubter began to fade, his edges blurring into the mist. You'll miss me, his voice echoed. I'll remember you, Elias replied. That's not the same. With that, the figure dissolved into the air, leaving behind a quiet hum, not silence, but space. Elias stood alone. The world felt wider. Behind him, the storm rested. Ahead, the path curved gently upward, glowing faintly. But something had changed. The air felt thinner now, as if the world expected something of him. Far ahead, beyond the curve, something shifted, not a threat, not a voice, but a presence that felt vast and patient. Elias took a step forward. And the ground responded. Chapter 6: The Weight of Choice. The path no longer felt neutral beneath Elias's feet. It responded. Each step sent a soft vibration through the ground, not unstable, but aware. The world seemed to lean in slightly, as if listening for his decision before deciding how to behave next. The air grew clearer as he walked, thinner in a way that sharpened his senses. Colors felt brighter, sounds more defined. Even his breath carried weight now, like it mattered more than before. Ahead, the path widened into an open expanse that shimmered like heat above stone. At its center stood a massive scale carved from pale stone, its arms stretching outward in perfect balance. One side was empty. The other held something heavy and dark, wrapped in shadow. Elias slowed. He knew, without being told, that this place measured something deeper than mass. A presence stirred beside the scale. Not a figure this time, but a pressure, a quiet gravity that pressed gently against his chest. Welcome, a voice said, neither male nor female. You've reached a place where choices stop pretending to be small. Elias approached the scale cautiously. What is this? The weight of meaning, the voice replied. Every choice you make adds to one side or the other. He glanced at the shadowed weight. What's that? The presence pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Your habits of expectation, it said. The ones that predict disappointment. They've grown heavy from repetition. Elias looked at the empty side. And this? That side waits, the voice said. For what you choose to place there. Elias felt a knot form in his stomach. I thought I already chose. I faced the storm. I faced the doubt. You faced them. The presence agreed. But now you must decide what you do when they return. The air thickened. The scale creaked softly, tilting under the familiar weight. Elias hesitated. I don't know what to put there. The presence was quiet for a moment. Then it said, You've been taught that choice is loud. That it must feel bold or certain. A soft glow appeared in the air, forming into small, floating moments. A pause before speaking. A breath before reacting. A question asked instead of an assumption. These are choices too, the presence said. Small ones. Often invisible. Elias reached out. His fingers brushed one of the glowing moments. It felt warm, alive. He placed it gently on the empty side of the scale. The balance shifted, just slightly. The shadowed weight stirred, unsettled. Elias exhaled. That's it. The presence hummed softly. Change is rarely dramatic at first. More moments appeared. A moment of curiosity instead of judgment. A moment of patience instead of retreat. A moment of kindness toward himself. Elias placed them one by one. With each, the scale creaked, adjusting. The shadowed mass pulsed, as if resisting. You feel that pull? The presence asked. Yes, Elias said. It's like gravity. That is habit, the voice replied. It does not vanish when challenged. It adapts. The ground trembled, and from the shadows beneath the scale, shapes began to form, outlines of old reactions, old reflexes, rising like mist given shape. Elias tensed. They're not here to hurt you, the presence said. They're here to test whether you'll act the way you always have. The shapes lunged, not with violence, but with familiarity. A sudden wave of self-doubt surged toward him. You're pretending. This won't last. You always come back here. Elias staggered. Instinct screamed at him to retreat, to close in on himself, to let the weight fall back where it always had. He clenched his fists. Then he remembered the storm. The breath. The space between thought and truth. He did not push the feelings away. He did not argue. He watched them pass through him like weather. The shapes slowed, confused. Elias stood still, breathing, letting the sensations rise and fall. The scale trembled violently. Then, with a deep, resonant sound, it leveled. The shadowed weight did not disappear, but it no longer dominated. The air changed. The presence spoke again, softer now. This is the work. Elias looked at the scale, balanced at last. It feels fragile, he said. It is, the presence replied. That does not make it weak. The ground beneath them shifted, transforming into a wide bridge stretching forward into a glowing horizon. Elias stepped onto it. The bridge held. Behind him, the scale remained, waiting for the next choice. Ahead, the air shimmered with possibility, but also with something new. A quiet tension, like the stillness before a storm that could either nourish or destroy. From far ahead, a distant sound echoed, not a voice, not a threat, but a rhythm. A heartbeat. Steady. Insistent. Calling him forward. Chapter 7. The Mirror That Watches Back. The bridge narrowed as Elias walked, its surface no longer smooth but textured, like woven stone. Each step sent a faint vibration upward, as though the path were listening for his intent rather than his weight. The rhythmic pulse he had sensed before grew clearer now, not loud, but steady, a heartbeat echoing through the space. With every step, the world felt less like a place and more like a presence. The air cooled. Light dimmed into a soft twilight that seemed to glow from within itself rather than from any visible source. Ahead, something tall and reflective rose from the bridge, stretching upward until it vanished into haze. A mirror. But not like the others. This one did not shimmer or distort. Its surface was calm, dark, and deep, like still water at night. No frame. No markings. Just a silent plane waiting. Elias slowed. The heartbeat grew louder. He stopped a few steps away, uncertain. I've already seen myself, he murmured. The mirror remained still. A low vibration traveled through the bridge, not a voice, but a presence that felt attentive. Elias took another step. The surface rippled. Not with his reflection, but with the scene. He saw himself standing in a familiar place, one that made his chest tighten instantly. A moment from his past. One he had returned to often, usually without realizing it. He watched as his younger self stood frozen, watching others move on without him. The familiar ache bloomed in his chest. Then something changed. The scene paused. The image turned, and looked directly at him. Elias flinched. The version of himself in the mirror did not look sad. It looked aware. You come here a lot, the reflection said. Elias swallowed. I don't mean to. I know, the reflection replied gently. You come because this place explains things. The world around them dimmed, leaving only the mirror and the two versions of Elias facing each other. This moment taught you who you thought you were, the reflection said. But you mistake memory for truth. Elias frowned. It felt true. Feelings are not lies, the reflection said. But they aren't always the whole story. The reflection gestured, and the scene widened. Elias saw the moment again, but this time, he noticed details he had missed. A distracted glance. A hesitation that had nothing to do with him. A silence that came from elsewhere. You filled the gaps, the reflection continued. You always do. Elias felt a pang in his chest. I needed an explanation. So you chose the one that hurt the most, the reflection said softly. Because pain felt honest. The heartbeat in the air slowed, deepened. Elias shook his head. I thought understanding meant blaming myself. The reflection stepped closer. Understanding means seeing the whole picture, not just the part that confirms your fear. The mirror's surface rippled again. New scenes appeared, moments of kindness he had dismissed, Moments of effort he had forgotten, moments where things had gone right, and he had quietly looked away. His breath caught. "I didn't see these," he whispered. "You weren't looking for them," the reflection replied. The space between them felt charged now, alive with recognition. "Why do I do that?" Elias asked. "Why do I look away from what helps me?" The reflection's gaze softened. "Because hope asks something of you. Responsibility. Participation. Risk." Elias felt the truth of it land deep in his chest. The mirror shifted again. This time, it showed a version of Elias standing at a crossroads. One path was worn smooth, familiar, safe in its sadness. The other was uneven, uncertain, and bright with possibility. "You stand here often," the reflection said. "But you hesitate." "Because choosing means losing something," Elias replied. "Yes," the reflection said. "And because staying still feels like control." The heartbeat grew louder. The mirror began to pulse, and Elias felt a strange sensation, as if the reflection were no longer contained by the glass. "I don't want to be trapped by this anymore," he said quietly. The reflection stepped closer, until it stood just inches away, eyes searching his. "Then don't use your past as a verdict," it said. "Use it as information." The mirror trembled. "Can I really change how I see it?" Elias asked. The reflection smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, but honestly. "You already are." The surface of the mirror cracked, not violently, but like ice breaking under sunlight. Light poured through the fractures. The reflection reached out. Elias hesitated only a moment before taking its hand. The world tilted. For an instant, everything dissolved, the bridge, the mirror, the horizon, replaced by pure sensation. Breath. Pulse. Presence. When the world settled again, Elias stood alone. But something had shifted. He felt taller, not in body, but in awareness. The weight he carried felt distributed differently, no longer pressing in one direction. Ahead, the path widened into an open expanse bathed in gentle light. Yet at its center stood something new. A structure shaped not by stone or storm, but by motion, a living current looping endlessly into itself. And within that motion, Elias sensed a question forming. Not from the world. From within. A question that did not ask what had happened, but what he would choose next. Chapter 8. The Choice That Chooses Back. The structure at the center of the open expanse did not stand still. It moved. Not in space, but in meaning, folding into itself, unfolding again, like a thought reconsidering its own shape. It resembled a current made visible, a slow spiral of light and shadow entwined, endlessly circling without beginning or end. Elias approached carefully. With each step, he felt a pull, not forward but inward. His chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. This was not something to observe from the outside. This was something that responded to attention. As he drew closer, the air thickened, vibrating softly against his skin. The ground beneath his feet no longer felt solid or soft, it felt responsive, like something alive and listening. A presence stirred within the motion. Not a voice yet. A question. It did not form in words, but Elias understood it immediately. When things become uncertain, what do you reach for? The spiral slowed, waiting. Elias hesitated. Images rose uninvited, moments when his chest had tightened, when the world had felt too unpredictable, when his instinct had been to shrink, to plan, to brace. "I reach for control," he admitted softly. The current pulsed. "And what does control give you?" the presence asked, its tone neither approving nor condemning. Elias searched himself. "Safety," he said at first, then paused. "Or the illusion of it." The spiral shifted, its movement becoming smoother, slower. "What does it cost you?" the presence asked. Elias swallowed. "Openness." The air brightened faintly. The current flowed closer now, not threatening, but intimate, like a river brushing against bare feet. "Control narrows the world," the presence said. "It protects by shrinking." Elias nodded. He could feel that truth in his body, the way he had learned to make himself smaller to feel safer. The spiral pulsed again. "And what do you fear would happen if you loosened your grip?" Elias closed his eyes. Images flickered, disappointment, rejection, uncertainty. But beneath them, something deeper stirred. "I'm afraid I'll want things I can't guarantee," he said. The current stilled. "That fear has kept you alive," the presence acknowledged. "But it has also kept you waiting." A gentle pressure formed at Elias's back, not pushing, but inviting. What if wanting isn't a mistake? The presence asked. What if it's a direction? Elias felt his breath catch. He had treated desire like a weakness for so long, something to manage or mute. But here, in this space, it felt like a compass, trembling, imperfect, but pointing somewhere real. I don't know how to trust it, he admitted. The spiral brightened, its motion slowing until individual strands became visible, each one a memory, a moment of choosing safety over truth, certainty over curiosity. You don't have to trust it all at once, the presence said. Only enough to take one step. The current parted slightly, revealing a narrow opening, not a doorway, but a pause in the motion. Elias stood before it, heart pounding. He felt the familiar pull to wait, to analyze, to prepare. Then he remembered the scale. The breath. The storm that calmed when he stopped fighting it. He stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The current did not swallow him. It wrapped around him, warm and alive, carrying him gently rather than dragging him along. He gasped, not in fear, but in surprise. The sensation was like being held by motion itself. Images flowed past him, moments of choosing differently, of speaking when he might have stayed silent, of resting when he would have pushed, of hoping when hope felt dangerous. Not outcomes. Intentions. The current hummed, satisfied. This is what choice feels like when it's not a battle, the presence said. It moves with you. Elias felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he had not realized was still there. The current slowed, then set him gently onto solid ground once more. He stood in a wide clearing bathed in soft, shifting light. The air was calm here, open. Behind him, the spiral continued its endless motion, patient and waiting. Ahead, the landscape changed. In the distance, he saw shapes, not threats, not trials, but openings. Possibilities that did not demand certainty, only presence. He took a breath. It came easily. For the first time, he noticed something else, a quiet joy, subtle but real, moving through him like a current of its own. Not excitement. Not relief. Something steadier. As he stepped forward, the world responded, not by resisting, not by yielding, but by meeting him halfway. And somewhere beyond the horizon, something ancient and curious stirred, as if taking note of the way he walked now. Not with armor. Not with fear. But with attention. Chapter 9. The Quiet Weight of Freedom. The clearing did not end where Elias expected it to. Instead of closing in or dissolving, it opened wider the farther he walked, as though space itself were stretching to accommodate him. The light here had no single source. It glowed softly from everywhere and nowhere, shifting with his movement, responding to his pace, his breath, his attention. And that unsettled him more than any storm. Without resistance, his steps felt uncertain. He slowed, listening for some signal, a warning, a test, a voice. None came. The stillness pressed gently against his chest. This is what freedom feels like, a quiet part of him whispered. And immediately, another thought followed. Then why does it feel so heavy? The ground beneath him changed texture, becoming smooth and reflective like polished stone. His reflection appeared faintly beneath his feet, not sharp enough to see clearly, but present. He realized with a start that he was alone in a way he had never been before. Not abandoned. Unheld. A presence emerged slowly from the air ahead, not a figure, not quite. It was more like a gravity, a center around which the space bent inward. When it spoke, its voice was low and layered, as if many echoes had learned to speak as one. This is where many turn back, it said. Elias swallowed. Why? Because freedom does not tell you who to be. The words settled heavily in his chest. You've learned to respond, the presence continued. To adapt. To survive. Even to grow. But now there is no threat to define you. No storm to resist. No doubt to argue with. Elias looked around. The vastness felt suddenly exposed. So what do I do? He asked. The presence seemed to smile, though it had no face. You choose. A soft pressure formed behind his ribs, not painful, but insistent. Without fear? He asked. Without a script, the presence replied. The air trembled, and images bloomed around him, not memories, but futures. Countless versions of himself, each walking a different path. Some paths glowed softly. Others dimmed. Some twisted into unknown shapes. None were labeled. None were guaranteed. His breath caught. How do I know which is right? You don't, the presence said simply. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Elias felt a ripple of panic rise. Then how do I choose? The presence drew closer, its gravity deepening. You listen for what feels alive, it said. Not safe. Not impressive. Alive. Elias closed his eyes. At first, all he felt was noise, echoes of expectation, old rules, imagined judgments. Then, slowly, something quieter emerged beneath it all. A warmth behind his sternum. A subtle pull, not demanding, not loud. Just honest. He focused on it. It led his attention toward one of the many paths, not the brightest, not the darkest, but one that felt like a breath he'd been holding without knowing. I think this one, he whispered. The presence did not confirm or deny. It simply receded, as though stepping aside. As Elias stepped forward, the space responded. The air thickened briefly, then parted. The ground reshaped itself beneath his feet. A sensation moved through him, not triumph, not fear, but ownership. This was his movement. The world did not applaud. It adjusted. Behind him, the other paths did not vanish. They remained, waiting, possibilities not chosen but not erased. Ahead, the chosen path curved gently, disappearing into a soft glow. Elias felt a strange mixture of grief and gratitude, grief for the versions of himself he would never be, gratitude for the one he was becoming. As he walked, the air began to hum again, low and steady. A rhythm. Not a heartbeat this time, but something broader, like the pulse of a living world. The presence spoke one last time, its voice distant now. Freedom is not the absence of limits, it said. It is the willingness to move within them. The words settled into him like seeds. Ahead, the path narrowed slightly, and the air grew denser, as if approaching something with weight and shape. Something that watched. Elias slowed. From beyond the curve, a new sensation reached him, not doubt, not fear, but responsibility. Not for outcomes. For direction. And as the path bent toward whatever waited beyond, he sensed that the next step would not be about understanding himself, but about acting from that understanding, even when no one was watching. Chapter 10. The place where action begins. The air thickened as Elias moved forward, not with resistance, but with consequence. Each step carried weight now, not heaviness, but meaning. The path beneath his feet no longer shifted to meet him. It held its shape, steady and unyielding, as if asking whether he would do the same. Ahead, the landscape narrowed into a wide corridor of stone and light. The walls rose gradually, curving inward not to trap but to focus. Every sound echoed faintly here, breath, footfall, the quiet rhythm of his pulse. This place felt different from the others. Not symbolic. Practical. Elias sensed it before he understood it. This was not a place of insight or revelation. It was a place of doing. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor, motionless. Not looming. Not threatening. Simply present. As Elias approached, he noticed the figure was not watching him. It was watching the path. The figure turned as he drew near. Its face was unremarkable, either young nor old, either stern nor kind. Its eyes, however, were clear in a way that made Elias feel seen without being examined. You made it, the figure said. Elias nodded. I think so. The figure tilted its head. Most stopped before this point. Why? Elias asked. Because understanding feels like arrival, the figure replied. Action feels like risk. Elias looked past the figure. Beyond the corridor, the path opened into something vast and undefined, a world not shaped by symbols or lessons, but by movement and consequence. What is this place? Elias asked. The figure gestured around them. This is where knowing becomes doing. A quiet unease settled in Elias's chest. I thought I was already doing something. You were preparing, the figure said. Preparing to act without the armor of certainty. The corridor hummed softly, as if agreeing. Elias glanced back, half expecting the earlier spaces to still be visible. They were not. Only the path ahead remained. What happens if I choose wrong? He asked. The figure studied him for a long moment. You will learn. That's it. That's everything. Elias exhaled slowly. That doesn't feel very comforting. The figure allowed a small smile. Comfort was never the point. A silence stretched between them, not empty, but full of possibility. People think change begins with confidence, the figure said. It doesn't. It begins with willingness. Elias felt the truth of that settle into him. All along, he had been waiting to feel ready, for fear to disappear, for certainty to arrive. It never had. "What do I do now?" he asked. The figure stepped aside, revealing what lay beyond. A wide plain unfolded, dotted with countless doorways standing freely in open space. Each door looked different. Some were worn and familiar, others strange and uninviting. Some glowed softly, others stood dark and quiet. No signs. No instructions. "This is where your life happens," the figure said. "Not in thinking about these doors, but in opening them." Elias felt his pulse quicken. "How do I know which one to choose?" he asked. "You don't," the figure replied. "You choose and then you respond to what happens." A subtle tension rose in Elias's chest. "And if I fail?" The figure met his gaze. "Then you begin again with more information." The simplicity of it struck him harder than any warning. Elias stepped forward, drawn toward a door that felt neither safe nor dangerous, just possible. His hand hovered over the handle. Before he touched it, a voice rose from behind him. "Wait." He turned. The figure was watching him carefully now. "There is one thing you must understand before you go through," it said. Elias waited. "This path will not protect you from discomfort," the figure continued. "It will not guarantee success. It will not spare you from doubt." Elias nodded slowly. "But," the figure added, "it will allow you to live from choice instead of reaction." The words settled deep. Elias closed his eyes briefly, feeling the truth of them resonate through his body. The memories of the storm, the mirror, the doubt, the weight, they all aligned into something quieter but stronger. He opened his eyes and placed his hand on the door. It was warm. As he pushed, the door gave way easily, swinging open to reveal not a scene, but motion, people moving, sounds overlapping, colors shifting. Life, unfiltered and unpredictable. Elias stepped through. The door closed behind him without a sound. Immediately, the world rushed in. Noise. Movement. Choices unfolding too quickly to analyze. Someone brushed past him, speaking words he barely caught. Another figure waited expectantly. A moment demanded response. His chest tightened. The old reflex stirred, retreat, analyze, delay. He felt it rise. And then he felt something else alongside it. A steadiness. Not confidence. Permission. He took a breath. And instead of retreating, he spoke. The words were imperfect. The timing uneven. But they were his. The world responded, not perfectly, not disastrously, but realistically. Something shifted. Not outside him. Within. Elias realized then that this was the work, not grand decisions, not revelations, but countless small moments where he chose engagement over withdrawal. The path was no longer visible. But it was being made beneath his feet. And somewhere deep within, a quiet certainty took root. He was no longer waiting to live. He was already doing it. Chapter 11, The Weight You Carry Forward. The world did not slow down for Elias. If anything, it pressed closer. Voices overlapped. Movements brushed past him. Expectations hung in the air like unseen threads tugging from every direction. This place was not cruel, but it was demanding in a way that felt new. It did not pause to explain itself. It simply continued. Elias moved with it. At first, every step felt deliberate. Every choice required effort, like lifting something heavy that never quite grew lighter. He felt the urge to retreat rise again, not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently, like a tide returning after being pushed back. And yet, something had changed. The weight no longer pressed only from outside. It came from within. He noticed it in small moments. A hesitation before speaking. A flicker of self-doubt when eyes turned toward him. The old instinct whispered, "Be careful. Don't draw attention. Don't make a mistake." But now, there was another voice, quieter, steadier. "You can carry this." He didn't always listen to it. Sometimes he stumbled. Sometimes he withdrew. But something inside him no longer collapsed when that happened. The world around him shifted subtly as he moved through it. Not magically, not dramatically, but in the way things do when you stop bracing for impact. He began to notice people more clearly. A woman whose laughter masked exhaustion. A man who spoke loudly to hide his uncertainty. A child watching everything, absorbing more than anyone realized. They were not obstacles or judgments. They were moving stories, intersecting briefly with his own. And in seeing them, Elias began to feel something unexpected. Responsibility. Not obligation. Not guilt. Responsibility as in responsibility, the ability to respond. The realization landed gently but firmly. He was no longer only reacting to the world. He was participating in it. One moment in particular lingered. He stood before someone who looked to him for guidance. The request was simple, but the weight of it pressed against his chest. He felt the familiar tightening, the urge to deflect, to defer, to protect himself by stepping back. Time seemed to stretch. This was the moment where the old pattern would have taken over. But now, there was space. He breathed. And instead of retreating, he stayed. I don't have all the answers, he said honestly, but I can stay with you while we figure it out. The words felt fragile, exposed. But they also felt true. The effect was immediate, not dramatic, but real. The tension softened. Something settled between them. Later, alone again, Elias felt the weight of that moment return, not as fear, but as awareness. This was what it meant to carry freedom. Not ease. Not certainty. But presence. He walked on. The world around him subtly shifted again. The light dimmed, not ominously, but thoughtfully, like evening approaching after a long day. Shadows lengthened. Colors deepened. Ahead, he sensed something familiar. A convergence. He recognized the feeling from earlier, the quiet pressure that preceded change. The path narrowed, not into a corridor, but into focus. He came to a place where the air felt dense with memory. There, waiting, was something he had not expected to meet again. A version of himself. Not the fearful one. Not the doubter. Not the hopeful learner. This one stood straight, grounded, eyes steady, but tired. The Elias who had carried everything alone. They faced each other in silence. At last, the other spoke. You've changed, he said. Yes, Elias replied. The other studied him carefully. You seem lighter. I am, Elias said. But not because I carry less. The other gave a faint, sad smile. Then why? Because I stopped carrying it alone. Silence stretched between them. I kept you alive, the other said quietly. I know, Elias replied. And I'm grateful. The other's expression softened, just slightly. But I don't need you to do that anymore, Elias continued. Not the same way. A tremor passed through the air. You're replacing me, the other said. No, Elias said gently. I'm integrating you. The word hung between them. The other closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something in his posture had shifted, less rigid, less burdened. I was afraid, he admitted. I know, Elias said. You did your best. The space around them seemed to exhale. The other nodded once, then stepped forward. As he did, his form softened, light threading through his outline until he blended seamlessly into Elias's own shape. There was no pain. Only warmth. Only wholeness. Elias stood alone again, but not lonely. Something inside him had settled into place. He felt heavier and lighter at once. The world around him seemed to recognize the shift. The air grew clearer. The ground steadier. Ahead, the path stretched forward, no longer uncertain, but open. And somewhere beyond it, something waited, not as a test, not as a lesson, but as a continuation. Elias took a breath. He was ready. Not because he knew what would happen next, but because he trusted himself to meet it. And with that, he stepped forward into whatever came next, not seeking to control it, but willing to carry it. Chapter 12, The Quiet That Remains. The step Elias took did not echo. There was no sound of stone, no shift of air, no signal that something had changed, and yet everything had. The world opened not outward but inward. The landscape softened into something almost ordinary. No glowing paths. No towering structures. No voices guiding him forward. Just a wide, gentle expanse that felt strangely familiar, like a place he had once known before he learned to be afraid of it. The sky above was neither bright nor dark. It held a calm, steady light, as if time itself had chosen to pause here. Elias walked slowly, noticing the quiet beneath the quiet. Not emptiness. Presence. There were no challenges waiting. No mirrors. No storms. No tests. Only space. At first, that unsettled him. For so long, movement had been driven by resistance, something to fix, to face, to overcome. Without it, he felt almost unmoored. He stopped walking. Nothing happened. No voice spoke. No symbol appeared. And slowly he understood. This place did not exist to teach him anything. It existed because there was nothing left to prove. A breeze brushed past him, warm and unhurried. It carried no message, no warning. Just sensation. Elias closed his eyes. For the first time, he did not search inward for meaning. He simply noticed. The rhythm of his breath. The gentle weight of his body. The way the air touched his skin. There was no performance here. No improvement to be made. No self to fix. Only being. A memory surfaced, not a specific moment, but a feeling from long ago. A time before he had learned to explain himself. Before he had learned to guard every thought. A time when existing had been enough. He opened his eyes again. The world looked the same. But he was not. He sensed something behind him, not a presence, but a trail. A long, winding path that represented everything he had walked through to get here. Storms. Mirrors. Doubt. Choice. Wait. Integration. He did not need to look back. He felt it in his bones. This was not an ending. It was a resting place between movements. A pause where nothing demanded his attention, and yet everything was welcome. He realized then that optimism, the thing he had been circling all along, was not a belief that things would go well. It was a willingness to meet whatever came without closing himself. To remain open even when it hurt. To stay present even when certainty disappeared. The understanding settled quietly, like a final piece clicking into place. He laughed softly, not out of joy or relief, but recognition. This was what he had been learning all along. Not how to force hope, but how to make room for it. The light around him shifted subtly, not fading, not brightening, simply continuing. Somewhere beyond this space, life waited with all its unpredictability intact. Elias did not rush toward it. He stood for a moment longer, breathing, grounded, awake. Then, without fanfare, without fear, he took a step forward, not toward an ending, but into the ongoing motion of living. And the world received him. Quietly. Fully. As if it had been waiting all along. Quick question before you go. What's one thought that keeps holding you back lately? Drop it in the comments. And tell me what book you want us to turn into a story next. Like the video and subscribe to join the momentum. Because growth doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from seeing differently.